The fine line between artistic genius and mental illness has long intrigued art historians as well as medical researchers. But now one such researcher is investigating the influence of a different brain disorder, epilepsy. In examining more than 5,000 artworks, Jim Chambliss has found that epilepsy can stimulate or enhance creativity, with the majority of artists he studied producing surreal rather than realistic works. Natasha Johnson reports.
You have an aura. That aura is like a buzzing sensation. And I go into a state, I call it a black hole of consciousness. My logic is gone, the brain is dysfunctional. I have no idea what's happening, even though I'm relatively conscious.
These 8 pictures are Howard Smith's attempt to depict the altered consciousness he experiences during an epileptic fit. The 60-year-old has been painting and drawing for most of his life, but until his 30s it was just a hobby while he pursued an academic career. Then the unexplained onset of epilepsy and unsuccessful brain surgery left him with slowed thinking and poor memory. But on the flip side, greater creative desire and a profoundly different artistic bent.
It's no longer realistic. I literally have to take emotions as a starter. I've got to start with emotions and not with a visual inspiration.
Epilepsy can stimulate and enhance creativity.
Jim Chambliss has analysed more than 5,000 artworks by 100 artists with epilepsy and migraines for a PhD at Melbourne University.
It is a spread of hyperexcited and hypersynchronous neural activity. So it can activate different thought processes that may involve sound or color or emotion, or even a distortion of a physical image simultaneously. So you get some very fascinating blends of different thought processes and visual images that can be truly original.
It's a research project that was triggered by a personal crisis. 12 years ago, the successful American attorney had to abandon his law practice and lost everything after being hit by a car, developing epilepsy and suffering brain damage during a violent seizure.
It was brutal. It was a real loss of not just my career goals and finances, but a loss of the perception of who I was, because I had to walk away from so many of the dreams that I had.
During recovery, he had a remarkable creative awakening, discovering a talent for ceramic sculpture, which inspired him to create these dramatic pieces.
I think it surprised most everyone, particularly my family and those who knew me, because I'm not from an artistic family. And that created a curiosity in me. So I had to find the answer to how epilepsy could influence art.
Part of the answer was presented in conjunction with an exhibition at the Asian Oceanic Epilepsy Congress in Melbourne. While most people associate epilepsy with generalised seizures, Jim Chambliss says artists seem to be most influenced when experiencing complex partial seizures, which are like being in a dreamy or trance-like state. And more than 80% of those he studied produced work which was surreal, dreamlike or imaginative.
The big difference is that the origin of the thoughts can be more intrinsically stimulated than the realistic or extrinsic representation of other things. And that is something that has been very surprising with how frequent it has been.
He's also adding to earlier research which identified an erratic or fragmented line quality that's common in the drawings of people with epilepsy.
These are the abnormal brain waves here And this is what happens with the drawing. That happens so frequently in people with epilepsy, whether or not artists, that it can be almost an effective diagnostic tool.
Jim Tambler sees signs of this in the work of Vincent van Gogh and in the sketches of Alice in Wonderland author Lewis Carroll, who were believed to have had epilepsy.
Having epilepsy is not the cause and effect of how a painting is, how it is finally formed. Now, a person with epilepsy may have a window into a more novel or original thought, but to go from the vision to the finished product is both within their control and their talent level.
He's also intrigued by the influence of epilepsy on the work of acclaimed Australian potter and artist Merrick Boyd, father of a talented brood that included painter Arthur Boyd.
You'll see some of the reflection of what would be surrealistic quality in the art, rather dreamlike.
Interviewed for an ABC documentary on the Boyd family, David Boyd told how stigma prevented open discussion of his father's condition.
The reason for the not defining epilepsy as such is that in those days it was associated with madness.
The stigma of epilepsy has at times been brutal throughout history. It was thought to be, in some ways, demon possession.
But Jim Tambler hopes more exhibitions of the work of artists with epilepsy will paint a brighter picture of the disorder.
It was so much fun to see the pride that they and their families had in their work and their appreciation and acknowledgement by others. That finally they thought, okay, this might have a positive side to it.
Natasha Johnson with that report.